As we continue our Group of Five special, we've got another special guest, Bubba.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to talk to Rene Ingoglia. He's a color analyst for ESPN, and we're going to be talking about the American. Rene, welcome into the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Also, can we talk about your being a detective in Orlando?
Absolutely.
Okay, we can do that too. Okay, great. Kyle, don't go to Orlando.
Hey, look.
He doesn't have any warrants, does he?
I don't know.
It's possible, though. I haven't been to Orlando, Florida, so probably not in the county.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. All right, I'm feeling a little bit better now. Let's talk football. Rene, certainly we're here. I guess we could start with locally with East Carolina. We're feeling very good. Been able to go to practice and a whole different atmosphere when it comes to from the last three seasons with Scotty Montgomery and now with Mike Houston and company.
Yeah, I'm a huge Mike Houston fan. You know, I actually the funny thing is, a couple of years ago, I called that JMU East Carolina game where JMU came in to Greenville and really just trounced ECU and really just physically beat them. You know, it was almost. You know, it was unbelievable to see an FCS team come in there and really dominate on both sides of the line of scrimmage, offensively and defensively. And I tell you what, I've done a few JMU games, and I've been out and have done preview shows for ESPN for the FCS National Championship game. So I've got to know Mike Houston a little bit. And he's a no-nonsense, just one of those old-school, tough coaches that, you know, you hear it thrown around a lot, right, when coaches take over programs. I'm going to change the culture. Well, he's going to change the way they practice. He's going to change their mentality, and he's going to get them back to doing the little things right. And, you know, there's some talent on that roster, and I think Mike Houston was the right hire for East Carolina.
What do you think of his staff? He brought most of the staff with him from James Madison and some familiar faces to Pirate Nation with offensive coordinator Donnie Kirkpatrick and offensive line coach Steve Shankweiler.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Donnie Kirkpatrick was at East Carolina before, so he's very familiar. Bob Trott, the defensive coordinator, has been around forever. He's a Bill Parcells guy, so a lot of experience in the coordinators, a lot of continuity because he brought a lot of assistants with him. So I think it's a great staff. Now, listen, I mean, there's going to be that transition period, you know, obviously changing the culture, putting your systems in, getting going. But, again, he's going to get the little things going with them, practicing the way he wants them to. But the ace in his deck, and you guys know this, is Holt Mailers. I love this kid. I think he's a star in the making. I think he's going to open a lot of eyes nationally before his career is over. I just like every upside that he has, from his arm strength to his athletic ability to his smarts. And he's a young talent. He's a big-bodied kid. And he's the type of quarterback you love as a head coach to build your team around, not just offensively, but as a leader.
Yeah, and then the great thing, they've gone out running and got to have him for a few more years, and then they've got another kid out of was it the Myrtle Beach area? That's Mason Garcia. He's going to be coming in next year, and they're going to redshirt him. So it looks like, obviously on paper, obviously you have like the issues of academics. You never know. You never know what's going to happen off the field and all that stuff, or injuries. But it looks like East Carolina, between those two guys, potentially could be Mike Houston's going to be set for the next 6 years if things go the way they should.
Yeah, and the other thing, you know, speaking of Mike Houston, he's very familiar in the state of North Carolina. And I don't need to tell you guys. You know, people ask me all the time about college programs. Listen, it's about recruiting. You have to get players. It's as simple as that. You know, you got to get players in there. And he knows that footprint, and he's going to be able to get into some doors that maybe weren't gotten into a few years ago.
That's true, and certainly another thing, Rene, is the fact that kids of today with the social media and all the technology, they do their homework. They know where the guy, you know, is a winner. He's been a winner everywhere he's been. They know that. They're not, you don't have like a used car salesman pulling this great pitch and a great thing. They're like, hey, you've lost a whole bunch of games. In this case, he's 80-25 as a head coach. So he's won a national championship with James Madison. He's getting the job done.
No doubt about it. And the other thing that ECU has, facilities. I love the stadium. I love the passion of the fan base. And obviously, you guys know the fan base has been a little down the last couple of years, but it's understandable. But I love the stadium. I can't wait to see the finished products when I get back up there. I'm assuming I'll get back up there this year. I just love, every time I come there, I love the college feel. To me, it's a perfect place to go and play football.
Yeah, absolutely, and it does look great, and maybe we'll get Bubba to text you some pictures that we're taking tonight of the new press box area all lit up in purple and gold. Rene, you're down there in Orlando, and we're not just previewing East Carolina, we're previewing the entire American Athletic Conference, and the kings of the American Athletic Conference and the whole so-called Group of Five the last couple of years are located in Orlando. Your 2017 or 2018 co-national champion, UCF Knights. How's the situation looking at the UCF this year, particularly at quarterback with the Notre Dame transfer, et cetera?
Yeah, so I haven't got out to practice yet, and I'd like to get out there next week if I can. Listen, they're loaded with talent once again. So to me, they're still the favorite until, it's like the big bully on the block. Until someone steps up and knocks them out, they're still the favorite. Now, I think Cincinnati in the East has a chance. They get UCF at home, but you hit the nail on the head of the quarterback position. Obviously, we know, the catastrophic injury to Mackenzie Milton. It's a miracle that the kid's even back on the sideline walking around. So that's great. His leadership will be there. DJ Mack, Darryl Mack Jr., of course, broke his foot. Still out, still hasn't practiced, so no one really knows. And then you get Brandon Winbush from Notre Dame, who's had accuracy issues throwing the ball. But guess what? He's a talent. He's athletic. He's got, I think, 16 starts under his belt at Notre Dame. So, that experience means everything. But the funny thing is they got a true freshman by the name of Dylan Gabriel, another Hawaii quarterback. He played at the same high school that that Mackenzie Milton did, and people are raving about this kid. So I wouldn't doubt it if you see Josh Heupel start Brandon Winbush, but have some packages for Dylan Gabriel because he's that type of dynamic athlete. But that's really the question. I think defensively in the back end, they got a safety by the name of Richie Grant, who's one of the top players in the conference. Their corners are really good. They got a good linebacker in Nate Evans. They lost some players on that defensive line. They're going to have to get some new players to step up. Offensive line, they got some good experience, and they got some really good running backs coming back. Adrian Killens, the speed he has out of the backfield. You have Otis Anderson who can do a bunch of stuff, and Greg McCray may be one of the best, if not the best running back in the American. So they're pretty stacked in the skill positions, wide receiver as well. But the $1 million question is that quarterback play?
Now let's say the quarterback situation comes to fruition and it works itself out, and they have a good, solid starting quarterback. Their non-conference schedule is a little tougher this year. Let's just play devil's advocate. Let's say they go undefeated again, 3 straight years. Do you see any way that the powers that be allow them into the playoffs?
No, they're not getting in, and it's not just them. There's pretty much no Group of 5 teams the way the system is set up now. It's just not. They're not getting in. We had our ESPN college football seminar a couple of weeks ago, so they bring in all the announced teams and we go over a bunch of stuff for 2 days, and we always meet with the college football playoff committee. They come and talk to us. Bill Hancock's there, and you talk to them and just listen. They won't say this, but the system is not set up for the Group of 5. It just isn't. You look at UCF's schedule. I'm looking at it. They get Stanford at home, and they go to Pitt. Right, those are the 2 marquee non-conference games. I just don't think they can get there even with an undefeated schedule. I just don't think the system's set up. I mean, it's just against the Group of 5, and it's unfortunate. The thing about UCF is, they get all the talk in the American, and totally understandable, right? I mean, they've had an incredible run. My thing is, I think UCF got disrespected a lot in the national media, but I think the American Athletic Conference in a whole gets disrespected. You know, I just don't think that conference gets what it deserves nationally. Now, I think it's now stepped up to being, hey, the best Group of 5 conference. Of course, they don't even like to be called Group of 5. We know that. They want to be Power 6, and obviously Group of 5 and Power 5. Those are just arbitrary titles anyway. There's nothing official about that, although people talk like it is. But yeah, I don't see a Group of 5 team being able to get into it. Just the way the setup is. I think it needs to be changed.
So I agree with you. The setup's terrible. It's set up for failure. And this is just me making a point here, and you alluded to it about how the American is a bit disrespected nationally as a conference. And I talked about this on a previous podcast, and I want to throw it out there at you, and if you want to comment on it, comment on it. If not, then don't. But if you really look at the American and you were to break it down and you compare it to the ACC the last 2 years, and you look at Clemson, nobody ever questions Clemson's conference schedule. Now, obviously, Clemson's awesome. Won a national championship, you know. So they definitely deserve their playoff spot. But nobody's ever looked at their conference schedule and go, well, Clemson deserved to get in. Their conference sucks. And the ACC, in my opinion, if you took Clemson away, is equal to the American. So, but nobody ever questions their conference schedule, yet everybody questions UCF. I don't think the ACC, outside of Clemson, is any better than the American.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would agree with you. Listen, if you look at the ACC this year in particular, I think a lot of the quote-unquote national experts are saying, listen, by far the ACC is the weakest Power 5 conference. And you know, to your point, you know, I did the UCF Pitt game last year, and UCF destroyed Pitt at home.
Yeah.
The game actually wasn't even as close as the score was, and Pitt at the end of the year almost came back and had a chance to win the ACC. So yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I totally understand it. Unfortunately, just a lot of people nationally, like we just talked about, they get caught up with the title Group of 5 and Power 5, and so I think, unfortunately, the way the system is, too much credit, too much respect goes to teams just because they're in that title Power 5 as opposed to teams in the Group of 5, and that's one of the issues and one of the problems the Group of 5 teams have trying to climb that ladder to get to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's just the titles, and it's the old adage of perception is reality. You mentioned Cincinnati being a contender with UCF in the East and for the conference title as a whole. Luke Fickell heading into year number 3. You know, depending on what you believe, turned down the West Virginia job. So doing a heck of a job there in Cincy. Last year, a great turnaround from year 1 to year 2. Do you think he can build on it? I mean, what was it, 10 wins last year? Do you think he can build on that this year?
Yeah, I think he can. I do. I did a couple of Cincinnati games last year. I did the bowl game at the end where they beat Virginia Tech. I mean, the Military Bowl. That was, to me, that was the best game I called all year. I thought it was one of the top games in all of college football.
It was a fun game.
They beat Virginia Tech, and it was a hostile crowd because Virginia Tech, boy, their fans travel. So it was probably 80% Tech fans in Annapolis for that game, and Cincinnati just played their butts off and just capped off a really good season. Listen, I think Luke Fickell is one of the really, really good young coaches in all of college football, one of the best. He's got great facilities there at Cincinnati. He's an Ohio guy, so again, recruiting, he's doing a nice job. He's got a defensive coordinator by the name of Marcus Freeman. That defense plays lights out. They got a pretty good schedule in front of them. Now, listen, they open up Thursday night prime time. They get UCLA at home. They have to win that game. We just talked about that stigma, right? Group of 5, Power 5. That's the game that Cincinnati has to win, not only for themselves, but for the conference. That's when they have to. And then, guess what? Luke Fickell travels down the street, and he goes and plays his alma mater, Ohio State. New coach there, and Ryan Day. So, I mean, they're going to get a chance pretty much to shock the world. You know, the first couple of weeks, you never know what they can do. But that is a team, Desmond Ridder, their quarterback, another year under his belt. I talked about, Greg McCray, a good running back at UCF. Well, guess what? Michael Warren at Cincinnati's back, and he's a good running back. So, I mean, that's one thing the American Athletic Conference has, some good backs. So, Cincinnati, I think, has the weapons to come out on top in the American this year. And as we just talked about, you look at their schedule, UCLA, Ohio State, they get UCF at home. They have to go to Houston. I'm sure we'll talk about Houston here. That's a team that I think is going to be scary this year. But, they have one of those schedules, too, that if they can run the table, again, I don't think they get in, but I think they get a lot of attention.
If Ohio State wins the Big Ten, Jesus.
Yeah.
If they were to go undefeated, and with a win over Ohio State, if they were Big Ten champions, that would create some conversation.
Sure would.
Rene, I had a question. Obviously, one of the this is their last year in the conference. What are your thoughts about it's certainly a huge mess, maybe a reality show with the University of Connecticut. What in the world is going on there?
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. I like Randy Edsall. I get along with him. He's very, when we have coaches meetings, he's awesome. He opens up. Sometimes you run into coaches, and coaches can be very paranoid, with what they tell people. And Randy Edsall is great. I love working with him. And honestly, it wasn't his call. You don't want to be an independent. Listen, my alma mater, UMass, has been independent the last couple of years. They would love to be able to take that UConn spot in the American. There's no doubt about that. But, yeah, UConn just kind of put their chips in the middle of the table and said, we want to be a basketball school. And it's going to hurt that football program. There's no doubt about it. It just came at a real weird time because the American had just signed a really nice TV deal with ESPN. So it kind of boggles the mind what the powers to be were thinking there. But, it's their world, and that's what they decided to do. But it's unfortunate for football.
I don't know what they're going to do for scheduling. Unless things have changed since the last time I looked, nobody has any open dates at the FBS level for next year. So they may end up having to schedule as many as 8 FBS opponents to fill out their schedule for next year.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what they're going to do as well. I know, talking to Ryan Bamford, the athletic director at UMass, he's done a really nice job with an independent schedule. But I tell you what, without that conference affiliation and the bowl tie-ins, it's just really Notre Dame has done it. Obviously, we know they're Notre Dame. And BYU's done it pretty well. Now, that's the one I think, UConn's gone. So I think Mike Oresco says, hey, do we go with 11, right? Or if you can get BYU as a football-only school, holy cow, what does that do for your conference? So I think that's he hasn't said that. This is just me, pure speculation.
We've speculated the same thing, yeah.
That's the school I think you go after in a football-only membership. And I think, boy, would that strengthen up your league something fierce.
Especially when you think about –
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to make a point of that's Rene, that's what we were talking about. If you get a BYU, that's a brand name. Plus, it also helps you with the schools out west, too, to help, I guess, with travel costs.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So it'll be interesting to see. Let's keep our eye on that, what they do. And listen, if they stay at 11, obviously the TV deal, that's more money for the 11 schools, and then that helps in recruiting and facilities and everything. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, we round out the East with Temple and South Florida. Yes. What are your thoughts on those two schools? Temple with a brand new head coach coming over from Northern Illinois. Rod Carey done a heck of a job at NIU. They got caught in a weird situation there.
Manny Diaz.
Yeah, with Manny Diaz.
Yeah.
Being their second choice. What do you think the Owls will look like this year? Will they take a step back or kind of stay stable? And what about the Bulls?
Yeah, so Temple, I think they're going to stay stable. I have never called an NIU game before, and I had never met Rod Carey. I met him at the American Athletic Conference Media Days. I was down there. I got to interview all the coaches for ESPN. Love him. Great guy, former offensive lineman. So, when you're a former offensive lineman and you become a head coach, you're kind of different. You got a good sense of humor, and you're a tough, strong guy, and you kind of look at stuff different. So I think he's going to fit in really well with that Temple tough motto that they have. The amazing thing is Temple's 4 straight years they've gone to bowl games. And when you think about the turnover they've had at the head coaching position, it's kind of amazing that program has just kept chugging along, right? Filling in new coach after new coach and still going to bowl games. And I really think Rod Carey will step right in to get Anthony Russo and Todd Centeo back, 2 quarterbacks that are veteran. And the one thing I love, I just talked about Rod Carey being an offensive lineman by trade. They got 3 really good offensive linemen back: Matt Hennessy, Joe Von Fair, and Adam Klein. And I'm an old school guy. I'm a former running back. You build your teams from the inside out. That means offensive line and defensive line. You start there and you build it out. And so they got a good foundation there. So, I think Rod Carey's going to step in there and do a really nice job. USF down the street in Tampa. Listen, I like Charlie Strong. He's a good coach. He's been around a long time, very experienced. A lot of guys. We talk about changing the culture, right? He's been there. I think a lot of players left that program this year. They started 7-0 and then lost their last 6. Very, very weird season for them. They moved a lot of players out. A lot of guys are out. Some new guys are in. They get Blake Barnett back. You think that kid? You think it's been like his 8th year in college football? He's been everywhere. The unfortunate thing for Blake Barnett, though, it's going to be his 4th offensive system in his college career, which is kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. But good experience to lead that team, and they got some good skilled players as well. Again, we talked about the American with some great running backs. Jordan Cronkite, Johnny Ford come back for USF. Good running backs. But it'll be interesting. The one big thing that if you're a former Florida Gator fan or a Florida fan of the American, the new offensive coordinator at USF, Kerwin Bell, former standout quarterback for the Gators, was the head coach at Valdosta State last year, won a national championship in D2. Now the offensive coordinator. So I'm really curious to see how that.
Great hire.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that offense this year, and if they can get clicking early. So a lot of interesting things in the conference this season.
I tried to get James Madison to hire that guy to be their head coach.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and no doubt he would have done a good job. And so I think his stay at offensive coordinator for USF may be short-lived, 1 or 2 years, because I could see Kerwin Bell being a head coach at a power school very, very soon.
Rene, shifting gears to the West Division, in the East, you've obviously had UCF that's had control of things in recent years. In the West, it's been Memphis. Mike Norvell really did a good job of continuing on and building on what Justin Fuente did before leaving for Virginia Tech. And so looking at the Tigers, I know they have a returning quarterback and then also a proving running back, even though they did lose a tremendous running back or two. So talk about Memphis.
Yeah, so Mike Norvell is another one of those really great young head coaches. I give Memphis all the credit in the world to be able to hold on to him, because I think he's one of those coaches where I think some of the power schools kind of missed the boat, really not going after him. He knows how to run his program. He's obviously an offensive coach by trade, but he just does an excellent job running the program. And the crazy thing about Memphis, he's lost 15 assistant coaches over the last 2 seasons have left. A lot of people don't know that. And it's because they've gone to different jobs. And that's something he's really proud of, because he's all about building his program, not just his players, but his young coaches too. So he lost 7 assistants just from last year's staff and 15 in the past 2 years, which is crazy. So I think it hurts stability in the coaching staff, but Mike Norvell's the type of coach that embraces that. So we'll have to see how they do. But again, another team with some good talent. You talk about their quarterback coming back. I think that means a lot. You talked about them losing Darrell Henderson, who had an unbelievable year, but you bring back Patrick Taylor, who's a 6'3", 240-pound bruiser with speed. So, again, and Memphis is that type of team where last year, early on, you thought they were out of it, and they fought their way back to win the West. So it's another team I think you can't discount, and you got to watch them in the West.
I think
Phil Steele picked them to represent the Group of 5 in the New Year's Six bowl game this year, the Memphis Tigers, for what that's worth. Next team to look at in the West, to me, Rennie, is one of the oddest moves of the off season, and kind of where that Group of 5 Power 5 title didn't mean anything. is you have Dana Holgerson leaving West Virginia. Yeah. I think he saw the writing on the wall, and some fans were kind of unhappy with winning, I guess. And so he left and went home to Houston. So screw you guys, I'm going home.
Listen.
And he now is there at Houston and got a great quarterback to work with De'Aaron King.
I think that was the biggest move in this offseason, and I don't think nationally that got enough recognition. I mean, that's a huge deal. I mean, what are we always talking about, right? Coaches from Group of Five leaving for jobs to Power Five, especially this conference. The American Athletic Conference coaches get pillaged by power schools. The fact that, whether he saw the writing on the wall or not, he's a successful Power Five coach in a big-time program, left to come to the American Athletic Conference. I don't think it got enough credit. Now, Mr. Fertitta had a lot of money, and they're able to pay him a lot of money, but he loved Houston. He always kept a house there from when he coached there before. And listen, you just talked about it. That team scares me to death. They are loaded with talent, and obviously he sees that. I mean, De'Aaron King was responsible for 50 touchdowns, 50 in 11 games before he tore his meniscus. He's back. He's 100% healthy. Their top 4 rushers are back from last year. Their top 5 of their top 6 receivers are back on offense. So for a coach like Dana Holgerson, who's an offensive coach, you're licking your chops. There's no doubt about it. The defense is going to switch from a 3-man front, from a 30 front to a 40 front. They're going to bring in a new look. That's always good when you give the defense a new look and you kind of move some personnel around. So Houston is the team I say keep your eye on, not only in the West, but in the American, because they have the talent. And I think if he can get his coaching philosophies meshing with that talent on that team, watch out. And they're another one that has this schedule. Now, their schedule is even more intriguing because they go to Oklahoma September 1, okay? First game of the year, you never know, right? Then they get Prairie View A&M in the middle of that, but then they get Washington State from the Pac-12 at home. Could you imagine if they start 3-0, what kind of recognition they would be getting? So that's the team, I think, to watch. And I tell you what, I did De'Aaron King's coming out party at quarterback a few years ago. USF was undefeated once again at the time. They bring in De'Aaron King into that game, and he goes off, and he wins that game single-handedly in the fourth quarter to ruin USF's undefeated season. And I just said to myself, guess what, Houston fans? Here's your starting quarterback for a long time, and he's that type of talent.
You're talking about Houston versus Washington State. What do you think the over-under will be for that game?
Yeah, probably about 98 at least. Maybe
198.
A lot of points in that one, for sure.
Oh, my gosh.
Another team to take a look at in the West is Tulane and the Green Wave under Willie Fritz. What a job he's done there. And you take a look at Willie Fritz, his track record. He's a guy that won at the junior college level. He won Division II FCS, then at Georgia Southern prior to Tulane making this excellent hire. And he won a bowl game a season ago and actually had a share of the American, but lost the tiebreaker. So what do you think about the Green Wave this year? Can they build on last year's success?
Absolutely. Listen, Tulane is my sleeper pick in the American. I said it when I got interviewed by the American Athletic Conference digital crew. They're the sleeper pick. I did the game last year where they beat Navy, that last game of the year, to make it to get that 6th win, go to a bowl game. They win it. They end up going to the Cure Bowl down here in Orlando. They win that game. So they end up 7-6. They get a bowl. They get that taste in their mouth. And I agree with you. Willie Fritz is another one of those kind of old school coaches. But they got talent on that team. Justin McMillan, if you haven't seen him play quarterback, he was a former LSU, transfer from LSU. Big, strong kid that can do it all, has a rocket for an arm. Darius Bradwell, one of their running backs. Excellent player. And they have talent on that team. And Patrick Johnson, their defensive end, is going to be one of the best defensive players in the American Athletic Conference. So watch out for Tulane. That is no doubt my sleeper team in the conference to sneak up and beat some people. So they can definitely not only definitely, I believe they will build on what they've done the last couple of years. And I think you mentioned Phil Steele earlier. I don't know if I have his rankings from me. I think he had Tulane somewhere like 94 or something, which I love Phil Steele, but I think that's just crazy. I think they are way better than that, and I think they're going to upset some teams this year. Watch out for Tulane.
And Rene, I had a question about, let's move to Dallas, a team that obviously has a lot of rich tradition and obviously the death penalty back in the 80s. But what are your thoughts, year two, Sonny Dykes, the Mustangs? What do you think about SMU?
Yeah, so, it's one team I didn't have last year was SMU, so I didn't see him in person. Sonny Dykes is another one of those guys, very offensive-oriented. They bring in a new quarterback, right? They bring in the Texas transfer, Shane Buechele. So, again, you're getting a marquee player at that quarterback position. Obviously, Ben Hicks, who was their all-time leading passer, transfers to Arkansas to be with Chad Morris, his former coach. But you bring in Buechele from Texas. So we'll have to see how he meshes. They lost their top rusher from last year, but they bring back a couple quality running backs as well, and they bring back their top two receivers in James Prochet and Reggie Roberson. So they'll be an interesting team to watch at all. Now, the one thing they do is they bring back 9 starters on defense. So that, and when I talked to Sonny Dykes in Newport this year, that's what he was most excited about, was that experience that he's bringing back on defense. So they were 5-7 last year, 4-4 in conference. I think they'll build on that, but again, I would see them as a team that's just kind of fighting to get to that 6-win mark and try to make a bowl game.
You know what's amazing about?
Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, I was just going to make a quick point. Rennie, what's amazing about that program is the rich tradition, but also, my gosh, I mean, you can the state of Texas is so big, you would think that, and I like Sonny Dykes, so I'm not, it's just year two, but don't you think with that program, I mean, they could be, I'm not saying they're going to be a contender, like a big-time contender, but I do believe that they have a shot every once in a while to be a contender, like have a miracle season or good season every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about it. And when you're in Dallas, in the heart of Dallas right there, I mean, it's fertile recruiting ground. It's everywhere. Now, unfortunately, I think they kind of get overshadowed in that area by TCU, the media market, what's going on there. And they're fighting in the games that I did do, even when they were doing pretty well under Chad Morris. They're fighting what a lot of teams are fighting is the fan base, to just come out to those games and stay energized. And I think a lot of schools are fighting that. And that stigma kind of can hurt your program, and it definitely hurts recruiting when you're in a rich state like Texas, and these recruits come to go to all the different games in Texas, and they see the different atmospheres. So that's always kind of it's been a handicap for SMU the last few years, no doubt.
Moving on, a team that had a surprisingly down year a season ago, that was the Navy Midshipmen. They've been so consistent going back to Paul Johnson's time, and then Keanu Matalolo, longest tenured coach in the American. That's what the real thing that's been missing is that steady quarterback play that Keenan Reynolds provided. And this year, do you think Malcolm Perry could provide that?
Yeah, I do. And, when I interviewed Ken Niumatalolo, it's funny. So when you do a Navy game, Ken is very, very matter of fact, very businesslike, as you would probably assume the Navy coach would be. Boy, when I interviewed him in Newport, really opened up, a lot more personable, and he took ownership on last year, that 3-10 season. And he blames himself. And one thing he told me, because he moved his quarterback position around a lot. He moved Malcolm Perry around a lot, and no one really kind of, he had Zach Abey, who's now gone, and they just moved a lot of people. He said this year, Malcolm Perry is playing quarterback from start to finish. He's not moving out to the A or B back. He is staying at quarterback. They got a good running back in C.J. Williams. Watch this kid. He's explosive. So I think their offense will get back to the Navy offense we're accustomed to. What a lot of people didn't realize was how bad the defense was last year. They were 112th in rush defense. I mean, there's only 130 FBS schools. They averaged giving up over 5 yards a rush. So their defense gave up what their offense is accustomed to doing to teams, and it was just not a good good matchup last year. And so I think we can all expect Navy to have that year. They bring in a new defensive coordinator. You know, we talked about coordinator at USF and how it will energize them. But Brian Newberry is a new defensive coordinator at Navy. He was at Kennesaw State, the defensive coordinator there. And for the last 2 years, he had top 10 ranked defenses in FCS. So Ken Niumatalolo brought in a lot of new assistants. He turned over a lot of coaches from last year. So a new look with a lot of coaches on that Navy staff.
Yeah, and I do think Coach Niumatalolo, he's never had 2 losing seasons since he's been at Navy, and it probably won't happen now. If you smell something burning or like like maybe the seat of somebody's pants is on fire, that's probably coming from Tulsa with Coach Montgomery. He started off great at Tulsa, 10-win season year 2, and it's just gone downhill ever since. Do you think he can turn it around this year, or is this going to be it?
Boy, you know, I don't know. It's tough. You know, I like Holt Montgomery, and you said it. I mean, the first 2 years, gangbusters, right? It comes right out. He gets the job. They go to back-to-back bowl games, and the last 2 just not good at all. Tulsa's, I don't know if you've ever been there, beautiful on-campus stadium, but Tulsa's, I believe, the smallest FCS Division I school in the nation. I think they got like a little over 3,000 students, very tiny. And again, it's recruiting. It's bringing players in there. And I think that first 2 years, he had a good assortment of players, and they played their tails off, and they won a lot of games. I just don't think he's been able to get those players in there. Now, we talked about Buechele transferring into SMU. Well, he's got a transfer as well. He's got Zach Smith, who came in from Baylor at quarterback. So he's got a little bit of a battle there. He had a quarterback on his roster already by the name of Seth Boomer, who had a really strong arm. He's got a couple good backs, but I think where they suffer, and we talked about it earlier, about building teams from the inside out, I just don't think interior line play on both sides of the ball is up to par what they need to turn it around. So I just, will they improve on 3 and 9? I think they have a chance to, but is it going to be a drastic turnaround? I don't see it. They open up on the road at Michigan State on a Friday night. That's going to be a tough one. Then they got to travel across the country to San Jose State, which is traditionally one of the worst schools in the nation. That's got to be a W for Tulsa. But then they go on the road to Oklahoma State. So you get San Jose State squeezed in between a Big Ten power and a Big 12 power. So a tough start for Tulsa.
And, Rene, I want to make a point, too, is the fact that we feel sorry for the Tulsa fans. We know what it's like to have a coach with the last name Montgomery and losing a lot. So.
Yeah.
And we don't have to worry about that anymore. And if things don't go well for them in Tulsa, then they won't have to worry about a coach with the last name Montgomery for sure.
Yeah. Listen, the coaching profession, I like all these guys. People think it's easy. It is a tough profession. Listen, do it as a head coach. Your livelihood relies on what 18 to 22-year-old young men do. And, you gotta recruit them. You got to coach them. You got to make them into good young men. And, unfortunately, the bottom line is you can do all those things and you could be a great teacher of young men, but you got to win. I mean, and that's the bottom line in big-time college football.
Rene, you got your crystal ball in front of you. Who's going to be playing for the American Athletic Conference Championship come December?
Boy, I'm going to go. It's going to be UCF and Houston. That's what I'm going to go with. So we'll see.
Can I give my pick?
Sure.
How about you guys?
I like your pick of the Houston. The two teams that are battling out in the West for me are in 1A and 1B, if you will, are Memphis and Houston. I'm going to go UCF and Memphis, even though I like Houston as well. That's a tough call for me. It's kind of like a coin flip between those two for me. But I'll go UCF Memphis.
It's tough call. Memphis, Houston are definitely the two favorites in the East. Cincinnati UCF. Where's Cincinnati and UCF playing, guys?
That's Cincinnati. This is the year. If Cincinnati's going to knock UCF off the block, it's going to be this year.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
I'm going to be different, and I'm going to go. I'm going to go Houston. Excuse me. I'm going to go Memphis, Cincinnati. It's going to be an old school 1990s Conference USA game. I'm going to go Memphis versus Cincinnati for the American Championship.
What do you like, Bubba?
That's what I think I'm gonna be right there with Kyle, because he did what I was gonna do, and I think with the game being with the game being in Cincinnati, and that defense that Rene alluded to earlier, 7 starters back from a unit that allowed just over 17 points a season ago. Then you have a proven running game and Warren, solid quarterback in Ritter. So give me Cincinnati to pull the upset in the East, and then Memphis in the West.
All right, yeah, I think overall, I think we guys with previewing this conference, it just goes to show, Rene, you were talking about this conference doesn't get the due it deserves, and it's unfortunate that we have labels of I can't stand Power 5, Group of 5. They're Division I teams, should be all Division I, and it's sad that the politics of football really hurt the sport when it could actually, as I've said many times, create more money for the sport. The sport could even grow and be even bigger than it already is, which is kind of mind-boggling. But I really believe that the powers that be, we need to have some new leadership, and hopefully at some point they'll finally realize that they could be making billions of dollars more than they are now.
Listen, I'd like to see 8 teams, right? You put the 5 Power 5 conference champions in. That makes the conference championship so important. It makes the season so important. You put the highest ranked Group of 5 team in it, and you got 2 at-larges. Just do it. Make everyone happy. And that's what I would like to see.
I
don't know.
That's my exact scenario, and it makes so much sense. I mean, now all of a sudden on conference championship game, all the conference championships mean something, like you just said, in the Power 5. And not only that, when you got the American Championship and the Mountain West Championship, who's going to win that? Is Boise? Is UCF? Who's going to represent the Group of 5 in the playoffs? Now you've just increased television ratings for every conference championship game.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Especially when the conference championships are supposed to matter, and then sometimes people say, I'm like, well, if they don't matter, then why are we playing these? I know it's television and I know about money, but there's no point in playing the conference championship games if they don't matter.
Rene, thank you so much for joining us. You did
by the way,
fantastic job previewing the American.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was fun.
And by the way, keep the streets of Orlando safe for us, okay? Because actually I'm coming to Disney World with my kids next year.
Will do.